It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. A good day for Sir Keir Starmer. Sky News projects that Labour will be the largest party, but would be short of a majority as the Conservatives take a battering at the local elections.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government.
I'm very, very proud to be here in Northallerton celebrating this victory in Rishi Sunak's constituency.
No clean sweep for the opposition either. We gauge what the voters around the country are saying.
I said to you yesterday, do you want to go vote? You said no.
Nah, I just couldn't. I just couldn't be bothered.
Also tonight, Lord Cameron tells Sky News the UK will appoint a new envoy to ramp up weapons production, saying Europe is facing a dangerous future. A teenager is found guilty of murdering 15-year-old Alfie Lewis outside a primary school in Leeds. Going where nobody has gone before, China launches a mission to collect samples on the far side of the moon. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. Could this have been the worst local election result for the Conservatives in 40 years? The results today show undoubtedly that voters aren't backing the Tories, as they did in 2019, the last time we had a general election, with Boris Johnson winning a majority. Sir Keir Starmer was quick to jump on that point, saying it has sent a clear message to the Prime Minister. Still, it's not been a clear victory for Labour, losing out on some seats to independent and Green candidates, with some of the seats expected to swing to the opposition from the Conservatives, instead going to others, including the Reform Party. But it was the mayoral race which could offer up some of the symbolic victories today, with all eyes on Tees Valley and York and North Yorkshire. Well, let's just take a look at the state of the parties now. The Conservatives have been levelled a tough set of results, losing more than 400 seats and 11 councils. Labour has clinched an extra 169 seats and taken control of 8 more councils. Both the Lib Dems and the Greens have seen modest gains, while the results have been good for independent candidates in local councils. Sky's political editor, Beth Rigby, has tonight's first report.
Applauding the win, this one extra sweet. Labour win in the York and North Yorkshire mayoral race right on Rishi Sunak's doorstep.
I'm very, very proud to be here in Northallerton celebrating this victory in Rishi Sunak's constituency.
This the highlight of a results day which showed the prospect of a Labour general election victory not nailed on, but certainly coming into view. Labour took scalps in Tory territory across the land, seizing control of Redwall marginal Redditch with a crushing majority. They took Milton Keynes and even Rushmore in the Blue Wall for the first time, a victory even Tony Blair couldn't get.
I declare that Christopher Paul Webb is duly elected as the Member of Parliament for the Blackpool South constituency.
And in Blackpool, a stonking by-election battleground win in the only parliamentary seat on the ballot.
We have the baby of the house.
Starmer there at dawn to hail a huge 26-point swing as this Boris Johnson Brexit win reversed. Those past victories now long gone, this as bad a night as the government had feared. Losses on Tory cabinet turf here in Penny Mordaunt's Portsmouth as the Lib Dems became the largest council party.
Let's make this Conservative government history.
Their leader Ed Davey hoping for Tory extinction as the Tories dropped to a record low. Conservatives hemorrhaging votes, but not all move into the Labour column as support scattered to smaller parties, suggesting a plague on both the main parties' houses, as well as signs Labour's stance on Gaza is perhaps costing them dear.
You think we can do it?
Yeah!
And nowhere more disappointing than Harlow. Keir Starmer told us on the eve of the vote he had to win here. Insiders telling me they're gutted not to get this Essex target over the line. But in the Tees Valley mayoral race, symbolic crumbs of comfort for Sunak.
It's absolutely great to be here with your re-elected Mayor of Teesside.
A victory he can claim. But Gorlin, the only place the PM could turn up today was a mayoral contest where he was airbrushed from the campaign. That now all forgotten.
It's also about this man next to me, because I could not have delivered the things that we've delivered in this region without you, Prime Minister.
Arms!
Sunak fighting a battle on multiple fronts. The Reform vote share eating into Tory support.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. But we've still got lots of results to come as well.
The Tories have had a terrible night. One cabinet minister admitting to me it's only been Starmer's inability to turn Tory losses into direct Labour gains that have given the Prime Minister a little bit of breathing space. Meanwhile, Labour insiders tell me that their wins in key battlegrounds show they are on course to win a majority at a general election. But what's clear from all of it is Labour haven't yet sealed the deal. You, the voters, seem clear that the government is the problem, but are you convinced that Keir Starmer's the solution? Sky News' election projection on vote share puts Labour on course to be the largest party in the next Parliament, but short of an outright majority. Labour will hope that voters choosing smaller parties and independents now will flock back when it comes to the national vote. But they simply don't know. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
So a win for the Tories in Tees Valley, but massive losses in other areas in the local elections. Let's take a deeper look at the results which we got in today. Sky's data editor, Ed Conway, has a look at the screen.
Well, we've had a host of results. Of course, we had those parliamentary by-election results. We're also going to get all of those mayoral numbers as well. But let's just focus, first of all, because this gives us a real sense of what's going on in the bigger picture, on those council elections, OK? And there's the state of the parties. You can see what's interesting about this, actually, OK, is we're looking not just at the net gains and losses by seat, but you're looking at just how many seats the parties won, but also how many they lost. So Labour, you can see, won 241, but also lost 72. We'll come back to that in a second. Lib Dems up 93, but lost 13. Relatively good for the Lib Dems, but really it's this Conservative number that's the most striking. Up 4, but lost 422, so in net terms, down considerably. You know, striking losses there for them. But the Green Party having a very good elections. And then that other is quite significant, isn't it? Because that partly explains where a lot of those Labour votes went. And partly that can be explained by this. This is giving you a breakdown of those votes. We've looked at ward-level data from the lowest level of Muslim population up to the highest level of Muslim voters. And you can see that as areas become more predominantly Muslim, you see that vote to Labour going down. So a big fall in areas with over 20% Muslim voters, down by 17.9%, whereas in the rest of the country with lower levels of Muslim voters, actually a slight increase. So you see the backlash against Labour's Gaza policy really showing there. There was also, of course, a reversion from what we previously saw in the kind of Brexit period. So areas that were strong Brexit voters, like Nuneaton, Bedworth, Cannock Chase as well, previously went Conservative. Now look at what happened this time around. Conservatives down 14 in Nuneaton, Labour up 15. In Cannock Chase, Conservatives down 11, Labour up 11. So you're seeing that direct transfer from one to the other, particularly in these seats in the West Midlands. Also, have a look at this, OK? These elections, most of those numbers we've been looking at, have been comparing the last time these seats were all fought. That was in 2021, OK? And compared with them, when the Conservatives were doing really well, of course, it's a big fall for the Conservatives, big increase for the Labour Party. But now, crucially, compare what we've just heard about with 2023. So this is 2023 versus 2023, Conservatives down 2.5, Labour also down by 1.2. And when you factor that into the national equivalent share, just giving you a sense of what this might mean for a general election, have a look. Labour actually falling slightly according to our projections here, 35% in that latest share. But the real story here is the Conservatives down towards 26%. That's the lowest share that they've had since 2013. And actually, you really have to go back to the 90s, the kind of mid-90s, to see any period where they were similar. But what's striking as well, look, the Labour Party up there back then, But right now, they are nowhere near as high as that, raising questions whether they can get that majority. But a big proviso. These numbers, particularly that grey line there, they are very much what you might see in a local election, but you're unlikely to see something quite like that in a general election.
Well, the losses for the Conservatives today would have been damaging anyway, but in a general election year, it looks like voters are turning away from Rishi Sunak's party. But as we just heard, it's Sir Keir Starmer's party which has also lost ground in some unexpected areas. Our political correspondent, Rob Powell, has been finding out what voters in some of those key areas think.
Wheels up from newly Labour-held Blackpool. Hundreds of thousands of holidaymakers used to pass through the town's airport, but it's been a decade since big passenger flights left here for European hotspots. The boss of this hangar says there's still untapped potential.
Blackpool has got a remarkable opportunity because of the size of the infrastructure. We've got such a lot of underutilised resource here.
Is there a role for national government in this? You hear a lot about sort of levelling up and investment in, I guess, like a place like the North West and Blackpool. Is that materialising?
We do. We haven't seen a lot of it here yet.
At the town's cricket club, the Labour leader pledged a fresh start and a reverse to years of decline.
We don't accept this hopelessness of the Tories that nothing can get better.
But there was also an acknowledgement of votes being lost in other parts of the country.
How much do you think the Middle East position is factoring into this?
Look, there are some places where that's a very strong factor, and I understand that and respect that. Where we have lost votes, we will earn them back.
Labour were confident of winning in Blackpool South, and the result here was emphatic, suggesting the party may well win back plenty of those seats that Boris Johnson took in 2019. Elsewhere, though, results were more of a mixed bag, suggesting that Sir Keir Starmer has a bit more work to do.
30 miles down the road in Blackburn, Labour lost seats to councillors who quit the party over Gaza and stood as independents. Hussein said the Middle East weighs on his mind.
There's conflict there, there's genocide going on at the moment. We want something to be done, put in place that will stop this genocide.
Would that affect whether you sort of wanted to vote for Labour?
Yes, definitely it would.
But Imran thinks domestic pressures are more important.
About hospitals and education and jobs, what politicians and government should be implemented in this country.
The London commuter town of Harlow is somewhere Sir Keir Starmer said Labour needed to win. But despite taking seats, the Tories kept control of the council.
I don't believe in the Labour regime at all. They don't give you the confidence to do that, the MPs.
I said to you yesterday, do you want to go vote? You said no.
I just couldn't. I just couldn't be bothered.
Labour remains the big winner in these results so far, but as the Tories shed support across the country, where those votes go could be crucial come the general election. Rob Powell, Sky News in Lancashire.
Well, Beth Rigby joins us live tonight, and Shingi Marike also. He's in Stockton-on-Tees in Tees Valley. Shingi, we'll come to you first. It was all eyes on Tees Valley today, and the question was if Ben Houchen would lose the mayoral contest, but ultimately he hung on. You were there. What was the mood?
Well, first of all, Gillian, I think it's worth reflecting on the significance of this mayoral contest. Ben Houchen winning here in 2021 with 73% of the vote represented a high watermark for Conservative success in the Red Wall. Losing today would have spelt a disaster. Ben Houchen was able to win, but I think there are a couple of things which Labour were able to hone in on after the declaration. One of those being the vote share, so he won this time with 53% of the vote. They say that that swing would be enough for them to win all of the Tees Valley seats in a general election. Then they also looked at the optics of his campaign and also the count itself. So we know that he barely featured the party and the Prime Minister on his campaign literature. Today he didn't wear a rosette, and in his speech he did not mention the Prime Minister either. And I think that, combined with the dismal results across the country, is why Rishi Sunak was here on Teesside within hours of the declaration to try and steer the narrative in a different direction. He shared a platform with Ben Houchen in what was essentially a campaigning event, and he tried to get the most out of this one sliver of good news on a really difficult day.
Beth, turning to you, you're outside number 10 Downing Street, and that vote in Tees Valley could have saved Rishi Sunak today. Talk of that leadership challenge might have gone away, but still a very bad day for the Conservatives.
That's right, Gillian. Look, day one is done. We've got more to come. But the silver lining in the storm clouds around Rishi Sunak was indeed that holding of the Tees Valley Mare. Look, tomorrow we're going to get another very important race for both him and Labour. That's the West Midlands Mare, Andy Street there, defending it for the Conservatives. And I have to say, it's too close to call. Tonight, I've checked it out again. Everyone's saying on both sides it's on a knife edge. They can't call it. So that's all for tomorrow. All of that, though, and that guy, you're right, Rishi Sunak is still in number 10 and he seems safe for now. And that's despite results that are so bad. It's reminiscent of the dying days of the John Major government ahead of that Tony Blair landslide. What's helping him? I think there's a couple of things going on tonight. I was talking to a couple of former cabinet ministers about it. One of them said to me that serious players in the party want Rishi Sunak to own the loss, then they can rebuild afterwards. Another said that the results were just catastrophic, but also said that change is now not possible, change of leader not possible. But there's another thing, and it is the breathing space that I was talking about, because when we look at the council results, 101 of 107 councils now called. The Tories have lost 430 seats. That is just simply dreadful. There's no way to spin your way out of that. But Labour are gaining, 169 at the moment. So you're seeing the seats scattering. They're not all falling in to the Labour column and giving Keir Starmer that momentum. So if you think of tonight as a scenario in which Rishi Sunak is tracking John Major, these results for Keir Starmer are no way a slam dunk, in the sense that he is not at the moment tracking Tony Blair, who was much further ahead of the Tories in 1995 and 1996 in local elections before he went on to win that landslide when you look at projected vote shares. So for Keir Starmer, I think there's still some work to do. Labour say to me tonight they're on course to win a majority, that they're winning in key battlegrounds, but his allies also admit to me that there still is far more work to do. One final thought, he needs a bigger swing in a general election than Tony Blair won to win a majority.
OK, Beth and Shingi, thank you both. Moscow has reacted angrily to comments made by Lord Cameron, which suggested that Ukraine has a right to attack Russia, saying the use of British-supplied weapons in Russia would be a significant escalation. The Foreign Secretary is in Ukraine and has been speaking exclusively to Sky News about the UK's plans to ramp up weapons production, saying the world is at a critical tipping point. Sky Security and Defence Editor Deborah Haynes reports.
In Britain's latest show of support, the Foreign Secretary is back in Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine.
But Lord Cameron is also focused on the war effort at home. He revealed a plan to appoint a new envoy to expand UK weapons production after the Prime Minister put the defence industry on a war footing last week.
There's a specific munitions strategy of £10 billion, which will do exactly what you're talking about, the ramping up of production. But crucially, I think we can go further than that in terms of a specific defence envoy with the ability from the Prime Minister to go out and make sure we're doing those multi-year deals with the defence suppliers, because we need to not only provide more weapons to Ukraine, we need to build up our own stock. So this is very important. It's a national priority. The Prime Minister's giving the lead, and I think the industry will respond.
The shattered city of Chasiv Yar is a reminder of the urgent need for Western allies to send more weapons to Ukraine. It's still under Ukrainian control for now, but Russian forces are slowly advancing in the east as the defending troops run low on ammunition. France's president has even suggested Europe should consider sending troops to Ukraine should Russia achieve a breakthrough.
I think the one line we shouldn't cross is I don't think it's right to have NATO soldiers killing Russian soldiers, but I wouldn't have NATO soldiers sort of in country, because I think that could be a dangerous escalation, and it's not necessary.
Instead, he says the best way to support Kyiv is by rushing in munitions and training recruits outside Ukraine.
What is the risk to Europe if
Vladimir Putin does prevail here?
I think, we're at an absolutely crucial tipping point in global affairs. The danger is that if Putin was successful here, like all dictators that want to take parts of other countries, he'd be back for more. This is what happened in the 1930s. And so you'd be very worried about Moldova. You'd be very worried about the Baltic states. So that's why it's so important. But if we do, as I think we will, prevail, then it's a very positive future.
But Russia still has a say, and its defence industry really is on a war footing. The battle of the production line will be key in determining whatever happens next on the front line. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Lviv.
A 15-year-old boy has been found guilty of murdering Alfie Lewis outside a school in Leeds last November. Alfie, who was also 15, was stabbed in full view of pupils leaving the primary school. Our correspondent Charlotte Leeming reports.
Holding a knife and wearing a hood in a picture taken on holiday, the teenager found guilty of murdering Alfie Lewis. The defendant, who can't be identified, stabbed 15-year-old Alfie in the heart outside a primary school in front of horrified children and parents.
Thank you to Alfie for giving us your love, joy and humour and making us smile every day. For the 15 years we had to enjoy you. We love you. You are always in our hearts and our minds, and until we are together again, keep dancing in the sky, our beautiful boy. We miss and love you always.
CCTV from the tragic day last November shows Alfie walking down the street to meet his friends. Moments later, he will be dead. During the trial, the defendant claimed he was scared of Alfie and it was self-defence. But the jury did not believe that version of events.
The evidence has shown us continuously throughout the trial that he did in fact plan the attack, and that he was in fact the aggressor, that he launched a very deliberate and determined attack and ultimately left, fatally stabbing and leaving a defenceless Alfie in the street.
Alfie's mum shouted yes and then sobbed when the guilty verdict was read out. She was supported by a large group of family and friends, many of them wearing orange, which was Alfie's favourite colour. But the defendant showed no emotion when the judge said he would face a life sentence.
A bench where Alfie and his friends used to meet has become a focal point where people can pay tribute and remember him. For his friends and family, their beautiful boy will be forever 15. Charlotte Leeming, Sky News, Leeds.
Just want to bring you some local election results. As you know, they're still coming in, and this one is for Gloucester. There is now no overall control. The Conservatives lose control of Gloucester after 20 years. The Lib Dems, as you see, have 17 seats, gaining 7. The Conservatives on 11, losing 15 seats. 20 years they have had control of Gloucester, now to lose that seat. And there has been a boundary change in this constituency, so did expect some changes, but the result, as you see on screen, no overall control. A former post office lawyer was accused of telling a big fat lie today over his knowledge of issues with the Horizon IT system. Janelle Singh was at times holding his head in his hands while giving evidence to the post office inquiry. Mr Singh was sent a report identifying the glitch, but didn't disclose it during the trial of former sub-postmistress Seema Misra, who was later jailed for theft. Our business correspondent Adele Robinson reports.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And yet, lawyers argued it wasn't.
All of this, if I received it, if I read it, is a big fat lie, isn't it? And
No, sir.
You know it, Mr Singh.
Janelle Singh, former top post office lawyer, a key figure in wrongful prosecutions, claiming he never saw a document detailing a bug in Horizon.
I don't recall seeing it, don't recall printing it.
This was saved in your drive, wasn't it?
I don't even know what you're talking about, because I don't know how to do these things worked.
You don't know how to save a document?
No, I didn't at that time in year 2010.
So the decades you worked for the post office, you didn't save a document?
Certainly not when I was at the Royal Mail Group.
I don't believe it at all.
It was evidence emailed on the eve of Seema's 2010 trial, who was jailed that same year.
I was very angry. But at the same time, it's like in the inquiry, it's good to know that they're on the other side. Instead of they asking us questions and harassing us, we asking them questions.
It was, at times, painful to watch.
Can you just keep your head up and therefore your voice up?
Yeah, I don't know when it was.
But documents, lawyers suggested, proved Mr Singh lied when he denied advance knowledge of horizon bugs.
You had known about the bug all along, Mr Singh?
No.
You were covering it up in 2013 and 2015, weren't you?
No, I wasn't covering it.
You were covering up your own guilty knowledge.
No, I wasn't.
Ian, a forensic accountant who investigated Horizon, dealt directly with Mr Singh.
I do recall the payments mismatch document, which looked as if it had been printed out either by him or on a machine identified it to his name. The fact that it was sort of printed out, and also look at the date of that document sort of very carefully, look at its proximity to the Seaman Mister trial. Must be a sort of huge question as to whether or not there was proper disclosure at that trial.
Mr Singh, why did you cover up the fact there were problems with the Horizon system?
What's becoming clearer how the role of Post Office lawyers may have played a part in ruining so many lives. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
The government has been defeated in the High Court for a second time by campaigners who say plans to meet climate targets are unachievable. 3 environmental campaign groups argued that government plans were unlawful because they didn't lay out how carbon emissions would be cut. Ministers have said they aim to produce a new plan within 12 months. A man who was badly injured in the Hainault sword attack has thanked the NHS for saving his life. In a social media post shared from his hospital bed, 35-year-old Henry de los Rios Polania said he had a long journey ahead after sustaining a hand wound in the attack. And the King has visited the Royal Windsor Horse Show, where he was greeted by a hug from his niece, Zara Tindall. It's His Majesty's 3rd outing of the week after resuming public duties following his cancer diagnosis. There is a new race for the moon, and this time it's to collect resources. China successfully launched a rocket that aims to be the first to bring back samples from the far side of the lunar surface. Our Asia correspondent Nicole Johnston reports.
China's race to space is stepping up. An unmanned rocket with a mission to explore the far side of the moon. The aim, to scrape the lunar surface and bring back to Earth 2 kilos of pulverised rock. If China succeeds, it will be a world first.
So the far side of the moon that we can't see from the Earth looks very, very different because it has a different history. A lot more craters there, and we even think that there's water and helium hiding in the shadowed craters. But the fact of the matter is that it's a very different geological environment that the spacecraft are sampling, so we can learn something very fundamental about the formation of the moon.
Ahead, a 53-day-long journey to the moon, relying on satellites to guide the probe, land it safely, and send it home again. In the middle of a crater on the moon, China is challenging the US. Its ultimate goal is to land its astronauts on the moon by 2030. A feat unseen for decades. The US is also aiming to step foot on the moon again within a couple of years. NASA warns China's mission to the moon is a military one, to claim resources for itself. But China insists it's peaceful.
Apollo, we went there a couple of days, came back home, and that was the end of it. The idea now, and I think this goes for the Chinese as well as the Americans and our Western allies, we want to establish long-term scientific bases on the moon and really learn what's there, explore for resources, and ultimately make the moon part of the Earth's economy.
This lunar launch is also about power, prestige, and national pride. A clear sign China has arrived, and space is its new frontier. Nicole Johnston, Sky News, Beijing.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by The Sun's chief political correspondent, Jack Elsom, and The Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgott. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing is, of course, the election results. This is the front of the Financial Times. The headline there, Tory trouncing lead Sunak with battle to avert general election rout. We'll We'll be right back with that and other stories. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. The Labour leader has called on the Prime Minister to call an election after huge losses for the Conservatives in local elections and a big swing to Labour in Blackpool. Lord Cameron has told Sky News the UK will appoint a new envoy to ramp up weapons production, saying Europe is facing a dangerous future. And a former Post Office lawyer has denied lying about his knowledge of bugs in the Horizon IT system. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with The Sun's chief political correspondent, Jack Elsom, and The Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgott. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Financial Times is leading with the local election results. Their headline reads, Tory trouncing leaves Sunak with battle to avert general election routes. The Times suggests that the re-election of Conservative Teesside Mayor Ben Houchen has allowed the Prime Minister to, as they put it, cling on. In a similar vein, The Express says rebels kill plot to oust Rishi for now. The Mail quotes one of those would-be rebels saying, "We're off to the pub." According to The Telegraph, Mr Sunak is optimistic, insisting the Conservatives have everything to fight for. While The Guardian's headline simply reads, "Tories crushed by worst election results in years." The Eye carries new allegations of sexual misconduct against the actor Kevin Spacey. Mr Spacey, who was found not guilty of separate allegations last year, says he hasn't been given enough time to respond to these new claims. Each time I've been given the time and a proper forum to defend myself, the allegations have failed under scrutiny and I have been exonerated. The Mirror is leading with reports that Prince Harry plans to visit the King next week. The Sun has a similar story with the headline, "Charles and Harry Reunion #2. And The Star has the news that the sitcom Gavin and Stacey will be back for one final episode at Christmas. And we are joined tonight by Jack Elsom and Jessica Elgott. Welcome to both of you. Well, let's start, obviously, with the election results. They're still coming in as we speak. The Guardian will kick off with your paper, Jessica. Worst Tory results in years.
Yeah, and it's actually in 40 years that these are the worst results. And there's actually very little comfort that Rishi Sunak can take from these results, even from victories like Ben Houchen in Tees Valley, where he's kept the seat, but lots of the swings in the seats that the Tories would need to retain in a general election show that the swings are high enough for Labour to take lots of those seats. And Labour winning elsewhere in places you wouldn't necessarily expect, winning councils in places like Buckinghamshire, Hampshire, Essex, Sussex, all in the south of England, what feels like very sort of Tory heartland seat, reaching far beyond winning back the Red Wall, which was obviously the story of the last election. I think we're going to see the story the next election being in places like that.
And Jack, what's your appraisal thus far? Is it as bad as predicted or worse?
Well, the numbers don't lie, and the numbers are pretty bad for Rishi Sunak at the moment. It's not just isolated to a certain region. You know, we talk about Red Wall, talk about Blue Wall. You know, as John Curtis points out, the Tory vote has collapsed right across the country. You know, the Red Wall areas that Boris Johnson won in 2019 and the sort of traditional southern fortresses down in the south as well. And it does seem that coalition, which Boris Johnson very sort of cleverly managed to knit together at the last election, is fraying. You know, and it's fraying at both ends. You know, we saw obviously Blackpool South, the by-election, go back to Labour. We saw Dorset Council go to the Lib Dems. We saw Labour take Rushmore, a sort of shire Tory, traditionally sort of military stronghold. And so, Keir Starmer's obviously the main winner from these elections so far. I think there are some glimmer of hopes for Rishi Sunak, as Jess said. Tees Valley, quite positive for them. But at the moment, as the papers went to print, Conservatives down 269 council seats, Labour up 177. It speaks for itself.
And Jessica, the suggestion that the Tees Valley result is perhaps the only reason that there won't be now this plot that we've heard much talk of to oust Rishi Sunak and the leadership contest, that's gone away.
I think that generally Conservative MPs seem to have lost their appetite for regicide. I never thought I'd be saying that after the last few years, but that seems to be the conclusion that they've come to, that, there isn't enough here that is so catastrophically bad that they feel that they can win over enough colleagues to get support for getting rid of him and imposing someone else. But I think they've probably bluntly come to the conclusion that even if they were to install someone else, as Penny Mordaunt says, she doesn't fancy being installed like a new boiler, but even if she did, it's probably not enough to turn things around.
OK, let's move to the FT and the question as to what this all means for a general election. Jack?
Yes, well, at the moment, obviously, the polls don't have it looking too rosy for the Conservatives, and it has Labour looking towards likely are going to form the next government. It's interesting, isn't it? We have this projected national vote share, and on that basis, as Sky's been saying tonight, Labour are falling short of an overall majority. They do form the largest party, but whether they'd be able to form a majority remains to be seen. Obviously, these are based on these local results, and we know that people vote differently in a general election when it comes down to the two main party leaders and who is going to be the next Prime Minister, whether that's going to be Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. Obviously, the Lib Dems have a very inflated vote in local elections. The other parties, I think it's about 24% so far and counting in these local elections. And so while Keir Starmer might be slightly miffed to see that, based on these projections, he won't form an overall majority, I think he will be, espousing the narrative that probably would change at a general election based on the current figures.
We read, Jessica, that Rishi Sunak is still insisting, I think in the Telegraph, an article that he's penned, that there is still everything to fight for. Is he being overly optimistic?
Yeah, he told, I think, activists in CCHQ that they could be part of the greatest comeback in history, and I do think he might be the only person who still thinks that. There is, I think there's still, even maybe in Labour HQ, people who think that they could become known as the strategists who blew a 20-point lead, but they're hoping they're going to become known as the strategists who, turned it around in 5 years. And I think one of the things that these results conceal, which is, going to be a huge part of the next general election campaign, is Scotland. There isn't elections going on in Scotland, and we've just seen what's happening with the SNP there. And that's going to play a huge part, probably, in delivering a victory for Labour.
To the Times, and we've mentioned it before, the results in Tees Valley and Ben Houchen being returned, albeit on a smaller majority. That is being written up as being enough. The Times saying that it's going to allow Rishi Sunak to cling on. I mean, do you agree with that?
I think so, and it seems that if Rishi Sunak is clinging on in Downing Street tonight, he has Ben Houchen to thank for that. He needed something to sell, not just to voters, but to the sort of restless plotters in his own party, that the Tories can still win somewhere, anywhere. And he found that in Ben Houchen. Now, obviously, Ben Houchen's share of the vote went down. Back in 2021, he sort of had, 74% of the vote that would make, a Soviet dictator blush. So obviously that was going to go down. But the fact he still managed to hang on with that majority gave Sunak something to show. And I think that was almost seen, if he had lost that, as the straw that broke the camel's back, which would sort of open the floodgates to no confidence letters going in to the 1922 committee. The fact that hasn't happened has allowed Sunak to survive, for now anyway. But it does seem the appetite is, like Jess said, completely fading. There is no really viable king or queen over the water who can come and lead the Tories to electoral success now. Even if there was a viable one, who would want to do it at this point? At the moment, it looks like they are, marching into an electoral defeat. And then, that person would probably have to, resign immediately. They couldn't exactly rebuild the party from the ashes of what they've just, the defeat they just led it to. And so I think that Sunak is pretty safe in terms of leading the party into that election.
And Jessica, when we look at the Ben Houchen campaign, that wasn't without its difficulties. Many saying that he ran on individual credentials rather than the Conservative Party ticket. The Conservative Party insignia wasn't very obvious on his leaflets. He didn't wear a blue rosette when the count came in. So even there, although it's a win, there are still issues.
Yeah, and I think what Ben Houchen tells us quite a lot about is, the way that these mayors have been able to build kind of personal profiles behind, the more adept ones have been able to do that behind their own projects, including Ben Houchen keeping the airport open. He's being able to show that he can deliver as an individual and not because he's part of the Westminster government. He distanced himself even today, talking about how he could easily work with Keir Starmer if he was in number 10. So, I don't think, even the Tories who are saying that this is the man who saved Rishi Sunak, I don't think they genuinely think that Rishi Sunak was the person who delivered Ben Houchen's victory.
Although Ben Houchen did thank the Prime Minister and sort of said that he couldn't have done it without him in his speech today, didn't he?
He did. He probably also is thanking the government for all of the money they've poured into the region. No region has received enough as much levelling up funding as that part of the world. But obviously, it is helping Ben Houchen build his profile up there, keeping the airport open, doing things with the docks, and so it's. I think it's a good relationship.
The Express returning to that theory that the plot has now been quelled and no longer will be calls to oust Rishi Sunak. But they do say, for now, do we think that could return as a prospect, or is that really completely gone away now?
I think this was the moment if they were ever going to do it. I do think that there is a difficult decision lying ahead for some of those Tory MPs who maybe got sort of 10 to 12,000 majorities, and they're the people who, with a good wind, they might be able to keep their seats, but on a bad day, they'll lose them. And the problem is they just don't really know what that looks like. Does it look like an early election? Does it look like a late election? Does it look like a change of leader or not? What policies does it look like that can deliver that for them? And they've all got different ideas. And frankly, no one really knows the answer to that.
Jack?
Well, I think that these election results show probably that Rishi Sunak is going to be going long in terms of when he calls an election, likely October or November, just because it shows that he's not ready at all at the moment, is he, to face the country in a national election. Now, what he's hoping for is something to come up which potentially would swing the results in his favour. But obviously, in that amount of time as well, you could see more Tory anger, potential mutiny bubble up amongst the surface. As Jess said, quite correctly, the Tory party is often been described as an absolute monarchy moderated by regicide, and they have had a taste for blood in the past few years. Are they really going to make their fifth Prime Minister in 5 years? Probably not, but they are a fickle bunch.
Well, the Mail's saying that the plotters are off to the pub, and they're definitely saying that they've given up on any plot.
Yeah, and they're being quite frank about that tonight, to be honest. I mean, they haven't got the numbers, and politics is very much a numbers game. And I think the estimates for the amount of letters that are in order to trigger a no confidence vote still remain pretty low. This doesn't, because of the results tonight are fairly catastrophic for the Conservatives. If that's not enough to do it, then it's hard to think of anything that will.
Dame Andrea Jenkins, first Tory MP to publicly move against the PM, said it was unlikely that others would follow in sufficient numbers to trigger a leadership contest. Coming back to when the general election might be, October, November, you're suggesting. Do you think that it definitely will be this year? Is there any doubt that it could go past 2024?
Well, I don't think there's much appetite for a January 2025 election. Rishi Sunak has said it is going to be at some point this year, and I can't see any strategic reason why he'd want to change that to January. It seems to me that at the moment, any sort of Tory strategist or any strategist will tell you that you have to fight on home turf. So what is he going to fight on? Is he going to fight on the economy? Well, he would like to claim wins on that, but actually people don't feel much better. Can't fight on the NHS, really. Can't fight on public services. The only dividing line you really have with Labour is immigration. And the flagship part of that is the Rwanda plan. And so he's going to cling to the fact that if he can get flights off throughout the summer, going into autumn, and it has some tangible impact on stopping those small boat crossings, he can legitimately then turn to Keir Starmer and say, are you going to scrap this? Are you going to scrap what is now a deterrent, which is stopping migrants coming across the Channel? And therefore, that opens up a little bit of clear blue water between the main parties, and potentially he can weaponise that to try and turn things around.
We shall see. Jack and Jessica, for the moment, thank you. We're going to take a break. Coming up, Prince Harry and the King are expected to meet again for only the second time since his cancer diagnosis. We'll discuss that when we get back. Do stay with us.
The type of illusions I do, it's almost theatre of the mind. So it's using people's memories, emotions and experiences and
I'm scared.
Crafting some things from those things. You seem terrified. I promise it's going to be okay.
So you're going to give us an example?
I would love to show you something if that's
please do.
okay. Yeah. So I brought a book that inspired me as a kid. Obviously, Harry Potter, Goblet of Fire. It's the real deal. Did you read this as a kid? Oh, clearly you know it well. Book 4.
No, it's not. No, it's later. It's 5.
Goblet of Fire is 5.
You've disgraced yourself on air, Will. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I'm a big fan. I haven't read them for a long time.
Well, grab it for me right now. You're going to start from the beginning and read to the end. No, don't worry, please. First of all, please make sure it is the real Harry Potter book. Have a good look through it.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to ask you to do, please, I'm going to turn away whilst he does this. You and I will stare intensely at each other.
Okay.
And open up to any page that you like, Will. And once you've done that, you are going to focus on a word on that page. Now, this is live on air. I don't want you to choose a short word like goblet or fire. Choose a really long word with lots of letters, something that's going to challenge me. Choose a really long word. Do you have a nice long word in mind?
I do.
Don't say it out loud. Close the book. And is it safe for me to turn around now?
Yes.
Yeah.
OK, fantastic. We're going to start really simply. All you're going to do is just focus on the first letter of that word. Get that first letter inside your head. And now you're going to jump to another letter inside the word as well. Perfect. What was the first letter of the word that you were focused on?
G.
G, yes. And now you're just going to focus on the second letter. Don't say it out loud. Is that an R that you're focused on?
It is.
It is, yes?
Oh my God.
OK, I'm going to take a hit on this. I'm going to show you. I think this is related to family.
It is.
And the way that you're holding your hands right now, it clearly is.
Wow.
Maybe someone that's inspired you. What was the word that you were focused on? A word in tens of thousands.
Grandfatherly.
Not grandfather, grandfatherly. Something like this, yes?
Unless Leah is your mole.
Innocent
You planted her years ago.
This is a strange insight into some of the illusions that you'll see in Wonders. So you see, it's not strange props or people in boxes. It's taking people back in time to those experiences that maybe inspired them in their lives.
That was insane.
That was amazing.
Thank you, my friend.
I promise I was looking, like,
Yeah.
there was no funny business.
Big stage show. It's in the Theatre Royal in Brighton, which is a beautiful show. And it's a show that explores the power of wonder in your life, how that can motivate and inspire you. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Jack Elsom and Jessica Elgott. Let's take a look at the Telegraph front page. And this story about Donald Trump, that he may tell NATO allies to spend 3% of GDP on defence, considering plans to push NATO members to increase their defence spending. This is not a surprise, Jack.
No, not at all. And for some time now, Donald Trump has been pretty unhappy with the sort of penny pinching from a lot of the NATO members. In fact, most of them last year didn't even hit their 2% target. And so 3% target is going to be a massive struggle for a lot of them. But it speaks to a growing sort of chorus of people in the Republican Party, which Donald Trump is almost advocating on behalf, who are very unhappy with America bankrolling the security and defence of Europe. And so I think this is the sort of more foreign policy posture that I think we can expect if Donald Trump gets a second term. You know, he was pretty relaxed about it when he first started. He concentrated mainly on America's domestic policies. And I think that if he gets a second stint in the White House, he's going to be mainly focused, especially on, obviously lots of foreign policy dominating at the moment, the war in Ukraine, the Middle East. And I don't think at the moment he's too happy with the with the amount of cash that lots of them are spending. And
Jessica, he also believes that the accounting rules should be changed, so that spending on military assistance for Ukraine, as we mentioned there, is not counted towards the target. So that policy would push several countries below the current target of 2% of GDP.
Yeah, it would make it even more difficult as well for countries to meet it. I think the 3% target it says here, only met by Poland, the US and Greece, so it's, it's practically no one else in the alliance. And I think, obviously, this is one of the things that's going to constantly come up through the referendum, will come up through the US election campaign. That's likely to coincide with our own election campaign. And at the moment, even the Conservatives aren't pledging to match such a high number, and Labour certainly aren't, and they even say that 2.5% is a kind of vague aspiration. And it's like, I think it's likely to be one of those things that is a flashpoint.
And interesting, just to remind viewers, that Donald Trump has said that he would be able to end the war in one day in Ukraine. That's something that he's promised to do. Let's turn to the... What's that, sorry?
Excellent if he does.
To the Sun now, and Prince Harry going to have another meeting, we're told, with his father when he's in the UK next week.
Yes, good exclusive on the front page of The Sun tomorrow. Prince Harry obviously coming here for the Invictus Games, which will take him to St Paul's Cathedral, not a million miles away from Clarence House, so we know King Charles stays. Obviously, relations between Prince Harry and the royal family have been rocky at best over the past few years since he left for America. But obviously, King Charles is going through a major health struggle at the moment, and whatever has gone on between the two of them over the past few years, this is a father and a son, and so I think many people in the country will be quite cheered at the fact that they are going to reconcile. Obviously it's their second meeting now. They met earlier in the year, and if they do come together, and we sort of potentially see maybe a thawing of relations between the Sussexes and the royal family, then I think that's probably something to celebrate.
Yes, Jessica, and I mean, it's a good news story, and as you say, it's a family, and it's a family relationship that we're discussing.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think after the some of the terrible breaks there were in the relationship after the publication of Prince Harry's book, it felt like that reconciliation like this was very, very far away. But because of the sort of health problems that obviously not just Charles has been having, but also including Kate as well, then it's a moment to open the door again, isn't it? And Prince Harry so far seems to be taking that opportunity.
OK. Jessica and Jack, thank you very much for taking us through the papers. We shall see you in the next hour. In the meantime, coming up next on Sky News at 11, Labour celebrate gains in the local elections as the Conservatives admit it's been a difficult day. We'll discuss that and more, and what it means for the general election when we come back.